Welcome, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today. In this explainer, we're going to act as literary detectives. We're opening up a fascinating, enduring cold case that has literally puzzled academics and readers for over 2 centuries. We are going to investigate the true origins of one of the most famous stories ever told, and we'll be relying strictly on the historical evidence and the hard data we have at our disposal.
Okay, let's dive into this. You definitely know the story of Frankenstein, but do you know the story behind the story? Because for a really long time, a pretty heavy shadow of doubt has lingered over the novel's credited creator, Mary Shelley. The central question that has sparked fierce academic debate for years is this: does Mary Shelley actually deserve the true credit for this science fiction masterpiece? Or was her husband, the legendary Romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, the real mastermind behind the monster?
Let's start at the very beginning with Section 1, the anonymous arrival.
When you look at the timeline, you can easily see exactly why the confusion started in the first place. When Frankenstein first hit the shelves on January 1st, 1818, it was published completely anonymously. Now, because Percy Bysshe Shelley actually negotiated the publishing contract and wrote the 1818 preface, early reviewers, including the famous writer Sir Walter Scott, just incorrectly assumed Percy was the author. It wasn't until a French translation dropped in 1821 and the second English edition in 1823 that Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley was finally credited by name. And by 1831, well, she felt the need to write an entirely new introduction explicitly claiming the story as her own invention.
Moving right along to Section 2, the scene of the inciting incident.
The creation of this novel was actually triggered by a massive global climate disaster. In 1815, Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted. It was this catastrophic event that choked the atmosphere with ash, causing severe global cooling. This literally led to 1816 being known as the year without a summer. Mary, Percy, the famous Lord Byron, and John Polidori were vacationing near Lake Geneva in Switzerland. Trapped indoors at the Villa Diodati by incessant torrential rains, they read a French anthology of ghost stories called Phantasmagoriana. Out of sheer, absolute boredom, Lord Byron challenged the group to a ghost story contest, and from that one contest, Frankenstein was born.
That gloomy, oppressive environment deeply affected the group. They felt a profound sense of ecological disturbance, something Lord Byron called a mad disquietude. Today, we'd probably recognize this feeling as eco-anxiety. The sheer psychological distress caused by this unseasonable, violent weather totally seeped into Mary's imagination. This apocalyptic genesis fueled the dark, torrential, and uncontrollable natural world that Victor Frankenstein is forced to navigate. You see, the monster wasn't just born in a lab. He was born from a world that felt like it was environmentally falling apart.
That brings us to Section 3, the Promethean spark.
Whoever wrote this book had to be incredibly well read. The text is just packed with complex concepts. We see the heavy influence of galvanism, those early wild experiments using electricity on muscles, along with broad Enlightenment theories of life. But it's also deeply, deeply rooted in classic literature. The book grapples with grand themes of free will from John Milton's Paradise Lost and the intense creator versus creation dynamic of Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound. Much like Victor Frankenstein cobbled his creature together from various parts, the author essentially had to cobble together these profound scientific and literary philosophies into one cohesive, terrifying narrative.
Next up is Section 4, the rival claims.
Now, what's really interesting about this debate is how sharply divided scholars are. On one side, researchers like James Reiger and Marie-Hélène Huet argue that Percy should definitely be seen as a collaborator. They point out that he replaced Mary's plain diction with his own vocabulary and suggest he introduced major themes, like human sterility and Victor's trip to England. But on the flip side, scholars like Anne K. Meller and Duncan Wu push back hard. They argue that calling Percy a co-author is an exaggerated and explicitly sexist claim, maintaining that Mary had completely established the novel's core ideas on her own and that Percy functioned merely as an editor, just polishing her existing genius.
So, who is right? Let's dig into Section 5, examining the evidence.
In 2008, English professor Charles E. Robinson published an edition that meticulously documented the original handwritten drafts. When you break it down by the raw numbers, the original novel is roughly 72,000 words long. Percy Shelley contributed roughly 3,000 words. So to put that into perspective, Percy's edits are absolutely dwarfed by Mary's massive foundational text. He contributed about 4% to her 96%.
And hey, if word counts weren't enough for you, modern data science has essentially closed this cold case. A 2022 stylometric analysis used computer algorithms to compare the stylistic habits in Frankenstein against the undisputed solo works of both Mary and Percy. the data found significant evidence strongly refuting the claim that Percy played a large authorship role. It definitively confirmed Mary as the overwhelming authorial voice of the book.
This brings us to our final part, Section 6, the mother of science fiction.
So, the crucial point is that we really must let Mary Shelley speak for herself. In her 1831 introduction, she fiercely defended her creative progeny. She stated clearly, "I do not owe the suggestion of one incident nor scarcely of one train of feeling to my husband." She fully owned her work, and as we'll see, the very themes of the book reflect a uniquely female perspective on the dangers of unchecked male ambition.
When you read the novel through a feminist lens, the story reveals itself as a profound critique. Victor Frankenstein essentially acts as a male mother. He attempts to bypass women entirely, usurping the natural female role of reproduction through his own unchecked, egotistical scientific ambition. The novel shows us the catastrophic disorder that results from this exact hubris. By silencing female agency and trying to monopolize the sacred power of creation, Victor brings a monstrous, destructive force into the world. Ultimately, it's a tragedy born from repressing the feminine.
Which brings us to a rather fascinating conclusion. We really have to ask ourselves, is the enduring impulse over the last 200 years to strip Mary Shelley of her authorship and hand the credit over to a man a real-life reflection of the very patriarchal anxieties she was critiquing in her own novel? It's an incredible parallel to ponder, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining me on this investigation today. I hope this explainer has given you a fresh appreciation for the brilliant, undisputed mother of science fiction. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.